My name's Barbara and I work at the STAR project. STAR's been around in West Yorkshire since 1994 and we have always worked with male and female survivors. So I found this morning very interesting. I enjoyed a psychiatrist's point of view because you don't tend to get many of those at these types of conferences, so that was useful. And it was also useful to get the academic point of view, but for me the most moving were the survivors. You know, definitely. So now to introduce you to our next speaker. An interesting past, starting off as a trainer, then moving on to counsellor, psychotherapist and now documentary producer, but always in the field of trauma. That's right, isn't it? So I'd like to pass you on to Sue Hanson.
Well, I know the film speaks for itself and it will keep people engaged. And I think it follows on very much from what other people have said today in terms of what Simon was saying about responses to people who are survivors and why we don't respond or people don't respond to people. And very much respectful of the work that the guys from Australia have done, and the two of them are here with Max. And I think our film is kind of the Scottish version of that, really. So just to very quickly tell you how this happened, I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with the work that Sarah Nelson, the researcher, has done. And in 2001 and 2009, she did research which was about the fact that there was a poor care response when people, male and female survivors of sexual abuse, actually went to services. And that was across the board. And when she looked into that and researched into that, she found that people felt that they weren't trained well enough. They felt that it was a can of worms, that they were afraid, a bit like people were about suicide, that if you said anything to people, that it was bound to make it worse. So a lot of this was based on frontline workers' fear. And also this kind of mystification about working with sexual abuse, that it's something for those people over there who are experts. And also those people who did begin to work with people found they weren't getting the support, the emotional support from their line managers. So I then went on and worked with Sarah and devised training, which was a frontline training course for people, an experiential training course called Safe to Say, which was about how do you work with people, what do people want, what do they need from you, and how do you look after yourself? And what gets in the way for you as workers? And very often, I think, as professionals or people in this field, and I know sometimes I'm met with great resistance, I'm a social worker, I don't need this, there's nothing wrong with me, and that kind of response, instead of actually being able to reflect on yourself and what might make you fearful of working in this area. So that has been what we've been doing in Scotland, government funded, and Anne's here from the government as a lead professional today, Anne MacDonald. They had the insight to know that this needed to be done, and we've done this training over the last 5 years in Scotland. In the community, we've cascaded the training to frontline staff, but we've also now got 18 trainers in Scottish Prison Service, so they're actually doing that in the prisons, and the predominantly male prisons in Scotland. We've also got it, thankfully, because in mental health, the nurses often said to me, oh, we're told don't go there. And of all places, as Simon was saying this morning, and lots of people at lunchtime have been saying, if this doesn't end up in mental health, where does it end up? So we've actually got it on the curriculum of the University of West of Scotland, pre-registered mental health nurses. And I've got an article here, which is written by one of those nurses who went through the training. And she's a survivor, as many people are. And that happens in many of the trainings. We get disclosure after disclosure. And she talks about what it was like for her, and this is in the British Journal of Nursing, and she suggests that all nurses do this training. So that feels great in terms of people acknowledging we need this. It's not to be put over there, and it's not for experts. We can all do it. So for me, this training is about inspiring people to believe in their own skills and having the confidence to actually go forward, because we know if people don't want to talk to us, we know if people put us off in that way and say, oh, let's talk about this instead, and redirect us. And it's not rocket science, is it? Nobody in this room thinks that. So I think it's very simple. It's about listening. And what we did, why we ended up doing this film was when we started the training, the stereotype, which is a stereotype that's out there very much, is that it's all female survivors and male perpetrators, and we wanted to knock that on its head. And certainly the statistics show a lot of female survivors, yeah, but there's lots of people who don't speak, and the kind of things that Mac's film and this film says is why they don't speak, particularly males, or why they speak a lot later than females do. So that's why we started to make this film. And the film has won a lot of, it's won an award in Scotland. Was the Scottish Mental Health Arts and Film Festival Award for documentary and fact-finding. It won that. And the guys were at the launch and answered questions. Anne was there, and a number of other people were there. People from Frasac in Scotland were there, and really validated those guys' experience. Fantastic. They couldn't believe it, the response they got. But I think that's all I need to say, really, because I think the film speaks for itself, and it's along the lines that we do the training, that we're not here as experts. The people who've gone through this are the experts, and we need to learn from them.
Very fearful, because my old man was like, I didn't know this at the time, but he was very controlling. And like, you couldn't make a noise, you couldn't, you know, if you got, like, just say, we all had turns at the dishes, for example. And it was like, you had to take without making a noise, or you had to eat your food without making a noise, or drink a cup of tea without making a noise, because you used to get annoyed at it. So you were like on eggshells all the time. You know, he had ruled us all with fear, and especially the boys. And it's like, as soon as if my old man came like within 5 feet of me, I started greeting. And when he was hitting me, he wouldn't stop hitting me until I wet myself. Like, have you ever seen a dog getting flogged that bad that, you know, its tail will go between its legs and it'll wet itself? And he would only stop hitting me, or when my mum intercepted it and says, "Alec, that's enough." But for me, I idolised the man. You know, like any normal child would idolise their father, and I wanted to be like him. But after the sexual abuse, it just changed into hatred. I was at 13 when I was first sexually abused. And the morning it happened to me, or the morning after it happened to me, because when he done what he was done, I just tidied my room. That's the only way I could deal with it. And I went down for breakfast, and my mum was a good woman, you know. She like done her best with us, and she made us like 2 bits of toast, and then you got your cup of tea. And I wasn't eating my toast, and my sister Rachel says to me, "What's wrong with you, Alec? Was he in your room last night?" And I was like denying it. "No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't." And she went, "Tell me, Alec, tell me." This was before like my other sisters and my brother came in, and I just said to her, "I wish you would fuck off and leave me alone." And I went outside and I broke down. And I'm sorry. It's hard talking about that, but so.
Of course, Alec, of course.
Anyway. Aye, you just want to. Every time I talk about that.
Yeah, the first time.
Aye.
Yeah.
You're right back there, eh?
Yeah. You go back there then. Yeah.
Anyway, that was my sister Rachel had said to me, "Alec, that's why we're up here. Because you've done it to me and Margaret."
Yeah. You'd done it to them before.
Aye.
Yeah.
And she was just protecting me, eh? And it was about maybe 9 months to a year later, he done it again, but the abuse became more extreme, and because I wouldn't do what he done, he like, after he had finished what he was doing, he punched us in the head, and he went, and didn't he fucking move. And for that day, it was like, honestly, I started working out, and I was like, in my head, it was like, when I'm old enough and when I feel I'm fit enough, he's getting it.
I was kind of scared. I was scared of my dad because he used to batter with wee belts and stuff, and just for things like what he would say was acting the goat, or like carrying on, which is just normal, like children laughing and making a noise, or instead of being asleep when you should be sleeping and we're maybe talking in our bed. So he would come through and like punch you, sometimes with the covers over you, he'd punch you and he'd push your face right up against the wall and tell you to get to sleep and to face that wall. As far as I'm consciously aware, I reckon I was around about 6 or 7, and then right up until 14, 15. But the first time I was in the house with him, I don't know if I was out playing or if I was already in the house, but he sent me to get coal, and I'd went up to the hall to go to the cupboard, but I was aware that he was right behind me, and I felt scared, but I was trying to hurry up and scoop up the coal, and I said, I've got it. And he said, just put that back, get the big bits for the back. I think at that moment I knew that something wasn't right and something was going to happen. And you know, like, it's one of them things when time seems to stand still. And I remember his hands being around my waist, and he took the button out of my shorts. I had a pair of white canvas shorts on. And then the next minute I just remember screaming this huge scream, and just feeling shocked, I suppose, and I was just shaking. I was a bit confused, and I kind of knew what he did, because I knew his hands were where they were, his both hands. But as he let me, he must have stopped mid whatever he was. I don't know if he finished what he was doing, but it was just so quick. Maybe because I screamed, he maybe thought he hurt me or something seriously. So I looked at him, and right, what he had done when I'd been fastening my shorts, he must have reached over me, and on the back of the door was like screwdrivers and stuff that he used to keep jammed in the wooden back of the door. And he must have picked one of them up while I was fixing myself, and he stood there with this big wooden handled screwdriver. And when I looked at him, he was laughing. It was horrible, because it was that moment in me that I felt like, and I remember thinking it to myself, he's not my dad anymore, ever again after that. But there was one time when he took me shooting that he sodomised me, and I hated anything after that. But he told me to look out the binoculars, to look for the ducks and the geese coming in for the war. And I knew that he was going to do something, because he started undoing my trousers. And even though I was only 7 or whatever I was, I remember asking him, just because I wanted to know how he would respond, I guess. And I said, what are you doing? And he said, nothing, I'm just playing. But I knew what he was going to do, because he'd already done it before. And I was made to keep looking through the binoculars, like as if that would distract me from what he was actually going to do. Then it happened, and it wasn't the first time anyway, so you kind of just surrender yourself to get it over with.
I was about 6.5. We moved to this new house, and here's this other woman. And that was she. Where's Mum? That's the first thing that went through my head. Where's my mum? And then the kicking started for my dad, and then he stopped feeding us. I mean, this went on for years. I went to school one day, he brought us new shoes, and the sole came off mine. And I came home, and he picked me up, and this wardrobe was about 6 feet tall. He just picked me up, threw me over it, I slammed off the wall, and I landed on the bed. And he says, didn't you get out of that bed? It just got out of control. I mean, this man was, I'm surprised he hasn't killed any of us. He didn't hit you like that. It was that. I came in one day and he stripped me naked and he put me on a table and I tried to get down. And he came over and he hit me that hard in the stomach. I couldn't breathe. I actually just, the table was up to about here. So I just went like that and he came over and caught me. And he put me back up, I had to put my arms out like that. And he says, you take them down, you're getting it again. But she was always sitting there leering at me. She had this, we call it a sleek-it look. That's what she had. This woman was just pure evil, right? She had no time for us or anything like that. And then we moved up to another scheme, and that's when it really went worse. I mean, she was raping me, and he's kicking the crap out of me and staring me, and things like that. And I've spoke to my brothers, and they says, yeah, we've seen the kickings you got. And I've always, in the back of my head, went, why was it me? Why was it me that, even though it wasn't me that did anything, it was me that got it. And that woman, I loathed that woman. I hated her. When she started raping me, that's when, because she'd always waking me up, you come with me, I'm not coming with you. Do you want me to tell your father? So she used his terrorising ways to me to get me to do what she wanted me to do. She was making me do everything to her. I had to give her oral sex, I had to suck her nipples and things like that, and she even took my fist to shove it out in her vagina. You know what I mean? And there was always this smell that, up until I got help, it was there. Like I could be in a house, smell, oh there's that, and I would just leave, it doesn't matter if it was a friend's house, right in the town, like that. That's what I started doing.
It triggered you?
Yeah, because it's a smell that you can't get rid of. It's like a cop when he says, when you smell a corpse, you never forget that smell. Well, that's what it was like for me with her. So this went on for years, and then he got charged and she got charged with raping an 18-year-old at a party. He got 4 years, she got a year. Then I was taken into care first, and then my other brothers, they were taken into care. I was only 10, but I don't understand how it took 3 years to get me out of there. It's nothing new, but it's never in the papers. The woman's face is never shown, and it should. This should be coming out like women being raped. How is it they're over the news when a woman gets raped, or she was raped in childhood by a man, but because it's a woman, it's a different kettle of fish, because people just did it. Women didn't do that. For a woman to do it, she's the carer. She's the one that looks after you. She's the one that nurtures you. She wouldn't do that to her child. Yes, she would. Why is it it's accepted for it happening to a woman by a man, but it's not accepted for a woman doing it to a man? That's my problem. Okay? Just don't understand it.
There were times I was angry growing up, even from the age of about 8-year-old. Because I'd moved from our first house to this area, and I started primary 5, there was a school up the road, and I guess it was because I was the new guy at the school that I was going to be getting picked on, and I wasn't having it. It's different when you're standing up to your peers, because they're more or less the same build or the same age as you. But because I kind of knew that my father was treating me the way he was, he could, because I couldn't fight him back. So for the first few weeks at this new primary school, I had about 5 fights. But I was kind of like saying to myself, I'm not going to be bullied. If I start allowing myself to be bullied, being new at the school, I'm always going to get bullied. So I just made it clear from the offset that I was going to stick up for myself.
I was bullied at primary school, and in secondary school I became a bully. I thought you had to get people to be scared of you to like you. And how far from the truth is that, eh? But just be, you know, self-taught. You know, and my father was a bully himself, but he was a coward on the inside, and I dare say it, that was me, because I was that riddled with fear. That's the only way I could like bring it out, was by showing a wee bit of wildness.
I just went off the rails in school and stuff like that. I would just throw a tantrum for no reason. I would just kind of like that. So they took us out of there and threw us in a boys' Liz D school. And for 4 years, you were under lock and key. All you heard was chinkling and clanking and the squeaking of their shoes on the floor. But it was regimented. And then one day a social worker says, this guy's getting institutionalised. We need to get him out of that home. So they took me out there and they put us in a place. It was like you went to live with your stepmom and dad. You went to a normal school, you came in, you had your tea, you went out to play. But I couldn't adjust to that because being under lock and key for 4 years and then you've got all this freedom, I just couldn't cope with that. I mean, when I got a girlfriend, I didn't care what to do with her. I didn't even care what to kiss her. Okay? I mean, that sounds funny to people, but I was 14 at the time, I just couldn't relate how you're supposed to relate to the opposite sex. I just couldn't bond that way.
I was a very aggressive young man, and it was with all that emotional stuff inside me. You know, I've heard it saying at some of the meetings I go to, we're emotionally crippled people that have suffered. We didn't care what way to handle our emotions. And well, with what I suffered through, with what I went through as a laddie, no wonder that I turned to something. Alcohol was my drug of choice, you know. It let me escape for what was going on in my head. You know, my head was always like a squirrel's cage. And when I took alcohol to a certain level, and then all that stuff stopped, and it was like I didn't feel, I didn't fit in. I didn't feel, you know, I didn't feel like everybody knew everything about me. But it went further than that because I used to like get myself into trouble. You know, I'd been gone to mental institutions, and I was in prison a couple of times, and it was I was always like blaming it on the drink.
I'll show you the scar on my arm, look. It wasn't because I wanted to be dead, but that's because at a time in my life when my father, who abused us, was charged, the court case took 2 years to go to court, and it was being deferred, five times it was deferred. And the 5th time that they did that, I was really low. More low than I was when I was a child being sexually abused, I think, because somehow you just managed to cope and go out and play, distract yourself. But this was full on. It's time to deal with this now, and I want it done. And I had the courage to do it, but I felt like still you're not being given the opportunity. It's not happening. And I sat on a chair, and I kind of thought to myself, death before dishonour, because I felt so weak, because I was so emotionally, I was weeping, not just on that night, but I'd started to write poetry. I was starting to try and express everything, and I felt really weakened by the power in emotions, and it hurt, and I didn't want to be weak. So it was almost like a self-punitive thing where I thought, here, and I did it very calmly. I didn't strike myself violently, and when I did that, I consciously remember thinking to myself, here's something to cry about, which probably is an old script for my father's kind of language, that he would give you something to cry about. So I was punishing myself for feeling, which is a strange thing, because you're supposed to be a man.
When I took the overdose, it was just like, all got too much for me. And it's like, I've dealt with my dad, you know, he's been to court and he's doing his time, and it's like, but it's, I'm still left with it. You know, I'm still left with the mentally scarred. What I'm trying to say is, and it could be a door banging, it could be somebody like raising their voice, and it's like, because you've always got that memories. It's just like triggers, it's triggers for then, it brings it all back. I hated like guys kind of in the public touching you or humiliating you, like for example calling you wee fat poof, for example. One guy had called me that, and it was like 8 years later I remembered it, and I wasn't in a very nice place, and I said about him, and it might have been innocent people that were getting it, but what I was seeing and was my own man. Like, you know, when it happened, I was asking myself questions like, what did I do? Did I give him Was I egging him on, or was I giving him any, I don't know how to describe it, or just meaning, was I gay, or have I got gay tendencies? I believe that my old man's left me with an illness in my mind, that I'm shite and nobody likes me and everybody hates me, you know. I'm no good and it'd be better not being here.